Today's story is about Hannah and Samuel from the first book of Samuel, and we read it today through the framework of D.W. Winnicott. Donald Woods Winnicott is not a name that comes up as often as Freud or Jung in popular conversation, but among psychotherapists and child development specialists, he is one of the most beloved and influential thinkers of the 20th century. He was British, a paediatrician before he was a psychoanalyst, and he spent decades in clinical work with mothers and children. Out of that work came a set of ideas that are, I think, among the most humane and practically useful in all of psychology. His central concept, the one he is most famous for, is the idea of the good enough mother, not the perfect mother, the good enough mother. What Winnicott meant is this. A child does not need a mother who always gets it right, who anticipates every need, who provides a seamless, frictionless environment. A child needs a mother who is present and responsive most of the time, who fails sometimes, and who allows the child to experience frustration in manageable doses, and who is there when the frustration becomes too great. The imperfection is not a flaw in the system. It is part of the system. It is what allows a child to develop the psychological muscles to deal with a world that will not always meet their standards. He also wrote about what he called the holding environment. The idea that what a very young child most needs is not stimulation or instruction, but simply to be held, to be contained, to exist in a space where the parent's mind is tuned to the child's being. The holding environment is not just physical, it is psychological. It is the parent's capacity to be with the child without imposing, without needing the child to be something in particular. And he wrote with great beauty about the moment when a child can be alone, truly alone, in the presence of the mother. The capacity to be alone, Winnicott said, is one of the most important markers of emotional maturity. And paradoxically, it is developed in relationship. A child learns to be alone, to exist inside their own inner life without anxiety, because they have had the experience of being reliably accompanied. Hold all of this in mind, because every one of these concepts is alive in the story of Hannah. Hannah is one of two wives of Elkanah. The other wife is Peninnah. Peninnah has children. Hannah does not. Every year the family goes to Shiloh to worship and to sacrifice, and every year Peninnah provokes Hannah because of her barrenness. The text says Peninnah was her adversary and provoked her grievously to irritate her. Hannah weeps and she cannot eat. Her husband Elkanah says to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? It is a loving thing to say. It is also completely beside the point, because what Hannah is experiencing is not something that another person's love can simply resolve. She has a specific grief, a specific longing, and her husband, meaning well, offers himself as a substitute for what she is mourning. He doesn't understand. He doesn't need to understand, but she is alone in this particular pain. She goes to the temple. She prays, and the texts tell us that she spoke in her heart, and only her lips moved. Her voice was not heard. She is praying in silence, in the privacy of her own interior. The priest Eli sees her lips moving, hears nothing, and concludes she is drunk. He says, How long will you go on being drunk? Put away your wine. Hannah says, No, my lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Eli sees his mistake. He says, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition. And Hannah leaves. The text says she ate and her face was no longer sad. The prayer has been received, not yet answered, but received. And something changes in her even before the answer comes. Here is the prayer she made. She vowed, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant, and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life. She prays for a child and immediately, in the same breath, promises to give him back. Winnicott would be fascinated by this vow because it describes in its most elemental form the essential tasks of parenthood as Winnicott understood it. To become a parent is to accept from the very beginning that this child is not yours to keep. The child arrives needing everything, total dependence, total care, but the direction of healthy development is always away from dependence and towards autonomy. And the parent's task from the very first moment is to love fully while preparing for separation, to hold and then to let go. Hannah articulates this at the moment of her greatest longing. She doesn't yet have the child. She doesn't know if she will ever have the child. And she says, if I have him, he will not be mine. I will give him back. Samuel is born. Hannah nurses him. She does not go to Shiloh for the annual sacrifice. She tells Elkanah she will wait until the child is weaned, and then she will bring him to appear before the Lord, and he will stay there forever. The weaning of a child in the ancient world took considerably longer than in modern practice, probably somewhere between 2 and 5 years. So Hannah has Samuel for those first years. She nurses him, she holds him, she is his holding environment. She is the mother in whose presence he learns, perhaps, what Winnicott calls the capacity to be alone. And then she brings him to Shiloh, to Eli the priest. She brings a bull, flour, and wine. She says to Eli, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman who was standing here in your presence praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition that I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. He is lent, not given permanently in the sense of being forgotten or abandoned, lent, given back to the source from which he came, entrusted to something larger. And then she leaves. Winnicott would say, this is the highest expression of what good enough mothering reaches toward. Not possessiveness, not the anxious holding on that keeps a child from becoming what they were meant to be, but the willingness to be the beginning of a person's story and then to step back. Hannah does not disappear from Samuel's life. Every year, the text tells us, she makes him a little robe and brings it when she goes up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice. Every year. A new robe, sized for a growing child, brought by a mother who does not see him daily, who has given him to God and the temple and the priesthood, but who has not forgotten, who keeps making the robe, who keeps showing up. This is the picture of love that Winnicott spent his career trying to describe. Not merger, not possession, not the kind of love that needs the child to be a certain way or to stay close, but love that provides and then releases. Love that marks the child with its care. I made this for you. I thought about your size. I thought about the cold, and then trust the child to the world. Samuel's story unfolds into the temple. One night he hears a voice calling his name. He runs to Eli, thinking Eli called him. Eli says, I didn't call you. Go back to sleep. This happens 3 times, and on the 3rd time, Eli realizes what is happening. He tells Samuel, go, lie down, and if he calls you, say, speak, Lord, for your servant hears. Samuel lies down, and the Lord calls, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel says, speak, for your servant hears. Winnicott wrote beautifully about the capacity to be alone in the presence of another, and the capacity emerging from that to be alone in the presence of one's own inner life. A child who has been well held, who has been given a secure enough foundation, can eventually be alone without falling apart, can sit in silence, can hear what speaks in the quiet. Samuel, lying down in the dark temple, having been sent back to his place 3 times, settling into the stillness, this is, in Winnicott's framework, the fruit of a particular kind of early holding. A child who learns, in those first years with Hannah, to exist inside his own experience without immediate external rescue. Hannah's song, which she sings after giving Samuel to the temple, the famous prayer in Samuel 1, chapter 2, is one of the most triumphant pieces of poetry in the entire Bible. He raises the poor from the dust, he lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes. The arc of her own life, from the woman weeping in the temple, from the woman Eli thought was drunk, has taught her something about how the world turns. She has been that poor one, raised from the dust. She knows what it is to be overlooked, to pray without words, to be misread by the very people who should have seen her. And she gave her most precious thing freely away.